Welcome back to the Bama Tailgate Show, Alabama and Florida State from Tallahassee. And we talk to you guys at and appreciate all of you guys for hanging out. Before we talk to Chris Lowe, let me remind you that this segment is brought to you by Visit Sevierville and the Smoky Mountains. Smoky Mountain Harvest Festival is September 19th through the 31st. That's 2025, which means all the beautiful fall displays throughout Sevierville and fall-themed events, as well as brilliant fall colors in the trees. Peak leaf viewing is typically mid-October through mid-November. Find out more at visitsevierville.com/fall. And he's a guy that calls that area home. It's great to see Chris Lowe and talk Alabama football and SEC football with you. And Chris, you're going to be on with us every game this season. I'm excited about that. But how you been, man? I know you got a lot going on.
I'm great, man. I'm like you. I'm just ready for football. I'm tired of talking about playoff formats and NIL, court cases, and who's going to sue whom. I'm ready to play ball on Saturday. I know you are too. I can't say I speak for all fans, but most of the fans I run into feel the same way, man. They're over all the off the field news. Let's kick it off and see who are the best teams this year.
Yeah, and Chris, so you got a lot going on too. Yesterday announced that after all these years you were leaving ESPN, and then today we find out you're going to be at On 3. We know Shannon Terry from our days there. Helping out with the video in Alabama, but congratulations, and people can find all of your work, as always, at On 3. I know you got to be excited about that.
Oh, yeah, man. Can't wait. Shannon has put together just an incredible team to cover college football, and you just can't ask for better people to work with and go attack football every day and tell the stories that resonate with college football fans. The thing to me, Mick, that makes college football so unique are the people, not just the coaches, the players, but all the people surrounding the sport, the fans, the people behind the scenes. And I look forward to that and my duties with On 3 of sharing those stories and going out and finding them and covering not just ball games and certainly news. You can't deliver enough news when it comes to college football. The third string guard, at some team, if he's hurt or if he's leaving school or he's transferring elsewhere, certainly in the realm of the SEC, it's never not news. And I love the fact that after 39 years in the profession, this is my 39th year, that I'm getting an opportunity like this to join this kind of team, a growing organization. And I can promise you this: the people in this organization that work for On 3, college football is much more than a job to us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell you, we love it. And we love talking to you. Big matchup between Alabama and Florida State. The Crimson Tide dealing with some injuries right now. Jam Miller isn't going to be there for the game, the starting running back. Jalen Roberts, one of the offensive linemen, one of the best players on the team. And not going to be there. And then Tim Keenan, ankle, not going to be there. When you look at these injuries for Alabama, how worried would you be if you were a Crimson Tide fan?
Well, I'll start with Keenan. Keenan's the centerpiece of that defensive line. He's a guy that you can't move him out of there, Mick. And he's the quintessential defensive tackle. If you get ready to play a team, you're trying to figure out a way to game plan for him because he's just so disruptive and just an anchor right there in the middle. So that, to me, Jam Miller's a terrific running back. He's far and away their most accomplished and experienced running back. But Keenan's the guy, as I point to this game, that I think they're going to miss the most. Now, they've got some guys, and talking to Kane Womack, their defensive coordinator, that they feel like have developed and come on. But there's nobody they're going to put out there that's the caliber of Kane Womack, of Tim Keenan III. And in the first game, when you're going on the road, you want to have your best guys. So I think that I will start with him. Roberts, there were some other guys. I don't know that he was 1,000% going to start, I think there were some other guys that were pushing him. I think they felt like they had at least seven guys that could play up there. The depth's a little bit better. I think that one's one that, with him being in the concussion protocol, wouldn't concern me as much. Now, Jam Miller, I was there a week ago, had a chance to talk to Ryan Grubb about their backs. I think the Riley kid is one to watch. He's really come on the last week or so. I don't know how many carries he'll get, but that's somebody that they really feel like has developed. They've got some guys that are bangers. They don't have anybody that's as explosive as Jam Miller. I mean, he's a guy, he's big, he's strong. Boy, he looks like $1 million, Mick. He has completely resculpted his body in the offseason. They've done, Dave Ballou and that staff have done an unbelievable job with getting him to the point where he is. Too bad he's not going to be able to play for a couple of weeks. But they don't have anybody that's that home run kind of guy that he is, that, he runs over somebody, he makes somebody miss. You blink and it's a 60-yard touchdown. So I think that's the difference, not having him. I still think this is an offense that they're going to throw the football a lot more than they did last year. That's the plan with Ty Simpson. Now, you always want to be able to set up the pass with the run if you can. You want to have that balance. So the explosive plays in the run game without Jam Miller, that's probably what they miss the most.
Hanging out with Chris Lowe from On 3 as we talk Alabama and Florida State. The Crimson Tide without some of their best players. Without those guys, though, how would you assess Ty Simpson, and what do you expect to see from Alabama? And then I'm going to ask you the same question about this new Auburn team with all these transfers and, rebuilt offensive line, new quarterback, new wide receiver, the squirrel from Tennessee's on this team as well. So we'll get there in a second, but what do you expect to see from Alabama's offense?
The number one thing is they're going to throw the football and get the football to their guys in space. And that's what Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb do. You go back and watch those offenses at Washington, the way they got their top playmakers the ball. Ryan Williams is a year older. I think you're going to see him play in the slot more and play Jeremy Bernard more outside. Bernard's a bigger, stronger, a more physical matchup. Ryan Williams is maybe, 180 pounds? Maybe he's a little bit more than that. So I think his ability to get in the slot and get some of the matchups he's going to get going to be bad news for the people they're playing with Bernard on the outside. They like Horton from Miami. He's really come on and played well in the preseason. And there are other guys too. I know there's been a lot of conversation, Mick, about Ty and what he is, what he isn't. To me, in these cases, it's always about how people play around him. And he's got some people on the perimeter, receivers who I think are capable and will make big plays. And then it gets back to how they protect him. Now, the last 2 years, Alabama got used to Jalen Milroe running out of trouble. Sometimes he ran into trouble. Sometimes he made mistakes. But there are a lot of times when defenses looked like they had him dead to right, and he was able to extend the play and make something happen. Ty Simpson is not a statue, okay? He is a very good athlete, but he's also not Jalen Milroe. He's not going to make a guy miss or run over somebody. Jalen was almost 230 pounds and was like a running back. They're not going to have that dimension to the offense, but I do think Ty can escape and avoid pressure and get out on the move and throw the football. He's certainly shown he can do that this preseason, and they're going to throw the ball from the pocket a lot too. That's the thing. What that mix looks like, how he makes decisions. That I know the thing he's done the best so far is the way he's commanded the offense. But you know what he should? Even though he hasn't played in games, he's had really one meaningful game he's played in that South Florida game 2 years ago. This is his fourth year on campus. He knows his way around. Now, granted, the offense is a little bit, but he understands this program, the expectations. He's been there in practice. And this is just being as honest as I can. He should look good in practice right now. He should look good in scrimmages because he's been there. The test and what everybody wants to see, every Bama fan wants to see, is how does he translate that to the field against a team like Florida State? Also on the road, first game, night game, tough place to play. When he gets hit a couple times, if they turn the ball over early, maybe they don't drive the football like they want to in the first couple possessions. How does he respond? I think he will respond, but you don't know that until you see it happen.
Talking with Chris Lowe from On 3 about the Alabama-Florida State game. Now, let's switch gears and quickly talk about the Seminoles. Gus Malzahn's their new offensive coordinator. Bama's had to go back and watch video from other teams that aren't Florida State because of the coordinators. What do you expect to see from the offense? And is it going to be possible for Florida State to have all things clicking with 4 new offensive linemen, 2 new wide receivers, running back and Roydell Williams that was hurt last year, and then another guy that transferred from Oklahoma, all these guys that are new in these spots?
This is one of those games, Mick, I don't know how much good it does to the staff, and I talked a little about this with Kane Womack, to watch tape from last year, Florida State, because you're right. So many of these guys are different. Now, same head coach. Certainly you can pick up on tendencies and things they like to do. But when it comes to personnel, you're looking at basically a brand new roster of players. So maybe, and I think they've done this, you go back and watch the tape where they were previously sometimes to see what they do well, what they don't do as well. That's always a little tricky in game one. Game ones are sort of weird anyway, because you're sort of filling out a lot of things, how new guys are starting for the first time. When you have a new coach, Alabama's got a new OC and Ryan Grubb. It's just always a little bit, there are a lot of unknowns. But, boy, there are more unknowns with Florida State than just about anybody else in the country. Certainly they're right there at the top of being a team that was completely remade. I think Florida State is going to try to do their best to lengthen this football game and not give Bama a lot of chances on offense, and especially at home. Because what do you want to do? If you're Mike Norvell, you want to get this game into the second half and really make the crowd a factor and not have to play from behind with so many new faces. You want to be able to keep that crowd really as your top weapon. So I think they do their best to try to run the football, take some shots down the field, and as I said, win the time of possession. We don't hear that much anymore in football, possess the football. People want to go fast. They want to run 100 plays on offense. I don't know that Florida State is going to be able to do that and beat Alabama. I just don't know that they've got the horses to do it. Bama's a better team. They got better players, even losing to Keenan, even losing to Jam Miller. They're a better football team. But what you don't want to happen if you're Alabama is give Florida State a reason to believe with 3 or 4 minutes left in the third quarter that they got a chance to win this football game.
What do you think about the rest of the SEC? You got Texas as the team to beat in the SEC and Georgia second. And do you think Alabama has slid back at all since Nick Saban retired?
No, I mean, listen, they did last year because they were so inconsistent. And I think sometimes that just comes with transitions. Did Alabama have good players? I mean, I'm not here carrying water for Kalen DeBoer and on that. Yeah, they had good players, but transitions oftentimes leads to inconsistency. And we saw that from this team last year. I think they'll be a much more consistent football team this year. And no, I don't think they've slipped. I think they're right there in that same conversation as Georgia, as Texas. Mick, I think the whole league has changed over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Some of that is transfer. Some of that's NIL, being able to sort of go out and plug holes quicker than you used to. And if you're Bama or Georgia, you can't stockpile 9 or 10 offensive linemen that could play anywhere. Those guys are going to go elsewhere and play. I think there's 5 or 6 more teams in this league that could play a role in who wins this championship.
Right.
I really do. Last year to me was the exception. 3 teams getting the playoff from the SEC, especially now that we look like we're going to expand. I think that will always be at least 4, and I think that will happen this year. But think about last year and the way things shook out. Ole Miss loses at home to Kentucky, the only game Kentucky won all year in the league. Georgia goes on the road to Ole Miss and gets beaten up physically and loses by 3 touchdowns. Tennessee loses at Arkansas. Alabama loses to Vandy for the first time in 40 years. Then they go on the road right in the middle of the playoff race the next to last week of the season and get beat 3 touchdowns. They're just awful on offense in that game. Alabama looked as good as anybody in the first half against Georgia and held on and won that football game. I think we're in for more of that this year. I think there's a lot of teams that can beat up on each other. We're going to see some carnage. And you know what? I don't know that we could have said that about the SEC from, say, 2016 to 2022, because it was Georgia and Alabama and Georgia. And then LSU in 19 was out of sight. It's a pretty big gap between those teams and everybody else in the league. It's not to say people in the league weren't good, but there was a gap. I don't see that wide a gap this year in the SEC. I think there's a lot of teams that will be heard from at some point this season. Very similar to last year.
Very interesting. Yeah, I look at the conference and, the way that things went last year, you got Texas in there. Georgia was kind of, banged up at the end of the season. And, the Big Ten was, really humming. They were a lot more top heavy than the SEC. But you mentioned expansion, and we're down in Tallahassee. One of the topics on the show is Jake Coker played both places, right? And one of the things I said to him was, hey, would you want Florida State in the SEC? He said, yes, of course he would. People down here want to be in the SEC. Do you think that if the SEC does expand, I think it's going to happen too, that Florida State is going to be one of those schools that comes?
You know what the key question is? Does the SEC want Florida State?
Right.
What's the appetite? I do think the FSU is a SEC-centric type of school, their tradition, how much the fans there love football. But those decisions, remember, where are those decisions made, Mick? They're made at the presidential and chancellor level. And I would say right now, based on the people I've talked to, there's probably more of an appetite to bring in a North Carolina than there is a Florida State.
Wow.
For a lot of different reasons. You get the academic part of it. You get the basketball program. A new foothold. The SEC doesn't have a school in the state of North Carolina. You got the Charlotte TV market. There's a lot of reasons. And that's not to say that they would not be interested in Florida State. But if let's say we did a pecking order right now, I think UNC would be at the top of the list. Maybe Virginia would be in that mix too. I'm like you. I think there will be more expansion with the newest deal, the newest agreement with the ACC, and schools like Clemson and Florida State are able to get out quicker, without paying, mega millions of dollars. I think that will expedite expansion. At some point, do we see Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Florida, Virginia, and a super SEC conference? Perhaps. But I don't think there's a real rush at this point from anybody in the SEC that I trust to expand. Now they'll watch, they'll monitor what's going on around the country, the landscape, what happens with Notre Dame. Notre Dame's the wild card, as you know. Anybody would take Notre Dame, but I think Notre Dame, given what's happened and some of the movement in college football, probably is as content with being independent as they've ever been.
Right.
And just sort of see what happens around us. 9 out of 10 years, they're going to be in the playoff. That's just the way it is.
Really? So you think with the way that this new format is that their ability to make their own schedule, that makes them a team that's going to be in the constantly in the playoff, huh?
Yeah. Let me add a caveat there. If we go to 16 teams,
right
now, is that a done deal? No, but I think the SEC going to 9 games will make it easier. I don't know that the Big Ten's just going to automatically jump in there and say, okay, we'll do the 5 AQs and the 11 at large. It may make it easier for those two behemoths, the Big Ten and the SEC, to finally decide on something. How about you? I'm sick and tired of hearing about meetings to schedule other meetings,
right,
to decide on formats. But if we do indeed go to 16 teams, Mick, I think Notre Dame 8-9 times out of 10 are going to be in the playoff. Because if you go to 4 AQ or 4 automatics, Big Ten, SEC, which is the format that the Big Ten favors, even then there's going to be room because you're going to have 2 ACC, 2 Big 12. How many more teams after you do that over and above Notre Dame are going to probably have a better resume? Now, you never know what happens. We don't have a crystal ball, but I think what Marcus Freeman has done there, what he's building, he's he's the kind of coach kids want to go play for.
Right.
He really is. And I think he relates well. They're going to continue to build that roster. So I'll be surprised if Notre Dame's not right in the middle of it every year. I am intrigued by if we go to the 11-5 format. How many times are we going to see a 3-loss team get in? I think the SEC people might want to hear this. You're going to have a lot more 3-loss teams in the SEC now, starting in 26 when we go to 9 league games. It's just, you do the math, and that's going to happen. You're going to have some 4-loss teams. I had a coach ask me this week, do you see a scenario if we go to 16 teams once the SEC goes to 9 games where a 4-loss team would get in? And no, not really. But 3, I think that could be fairly common, that a team – take South Carolina last year. They were 9-3. Few teams were playing better football at the end of the season. They beat Clemson at Clemson. They get in that scenario in a 16. There's no doubt that they get in. Bama gets in last year.
Yeah.
As bad as they looked against Oklahoma with their resume, remember they beat LSU on the road. They beat Georgia. They would have gotten in. So I think you're going to see when we go to 16, and I'm confident we will at some point, you're going to see a lot of 3-loss teams. I draw the line at 4. It'd have to be crazy. It'd have to be LSU losing to Clemson in a close game and then winning a lot of big games but losing some tight games and getting to 4. I still think that's very unlikely unless the league just totally cannibalizes itself.
Right.
And that's possible with 9 league games. I'll go on record. I say there's only one team this year that loses fewer than 1 game. I think everybody but at least one will have at least 2 losses. Now I don't know how far on the limb that's really going, but I think that's how balanced the league will be, and that's how confident I am that teams 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 could beat team 1, 2, or 3. We saw it last year. I think we're going to see it again this year.
Yeah, when Mike Leach was talking about, the late great Mike Leach, by the way, was talking about football, and he's like, there's a playoff in high school, and there's a playoff in Pee Wee football, and there's a playoff in NFL, and I was kind of like, I liked the fact that the regular season in college football was the playoff, right? You lose game 1 and you're out. Now it's not like that anymore. And now instead of like looking at this thing and going, well, 12 teams or 16, I'm fine opening this thing really far up, because last year I didn't feel like some of the teams that got in deserved to get in over teams in the SEC that played hard schedules and had to play week after week against tough teams. And it's like, well, 16, is that enough? Why not just do 32? And, it just, the conference championship games don't mean as much anymore. Maybe I'm crazy for thinking that, but I'm just kind of to that point right now. Like, hey, why not open it way up?
And you're basically talking about an NFL-like model.
Yeah, bigger.
Play pretty much everybody plays the same type season. You have a preset playoff. We may be moving to that. I don't know when. Maybe football breaks off. 32 teams, 42 teams. Does its own thing. I don't think that's preposterous. A lot of coaches think that's going to happen. Their own governance, their own commissioner, their own rules, their own playoff. Players having their own representation, basically collective bargaining. I don't know how far away we are from that. I bet you we are closer to it than we are far away to something like that happening. I think the thinking, I don't know that I understand the rationale, is college football leaders want to have as many fan bases and teams still engaged in November. And, when we had 14 playoff, by the time you hit November 1st or 2nd, what were there really, 6, 7 teams that really had a shot? The larger you make it, to your point, certainly if it goes to 16, there's 20 teams, 25 teams that maybe things go right, have a chance to get in there. Now, I'm not a 24, 28 team guy like has been proposed in the Big Ten, because then I think you completely diminish the value of the regular season. Now, people may disagree with that, but I do like, Mick, the fact that you go into November and there's a team that's maybe hovering there with 3 losses. Yeah, they got to win every game in November, but they got some tough games in their schedule, and there is a pathway into the playoff if they win every game. South Carolina would have been that kind of team last year, for instance.
Right.
They go into November. Nobody really had them as a playoff candidate in October. And, they win a lot of big games. They beat A&M, they beat Missouri, then they beat Clemson at the end of the season. If you expand that playoff, to use the Gamecocks as an example, then they're in. And that fan base is, how stoked those fan bases would be at that point, the players. It just sort of opens it up to more teams. Now, there's a difference to me in exclusivity as opposed to who's going to win it. I still think maybe I'm a little naive here. I still think it's going to be the usual suspects that win the title. What's that? Every year, 5, 6, 7 teams that legitimately have a chance to win it. Look back the last 20, 25 years. It's pretty much been, at least in the championship game, been a few exceptions. TCU got there one year and got beat 60 points. Oregon, back in 14, got there and lost. So there have been a few of the, what I would call the not so usual suspects, but excuse me, by and large, the same teams. It's the resource teams. It's the teams that, for the most part, have the tradition. The teams that are paying their coaches the most money. And now, probably most importantly, the teams that have the most expensive rosters.
Yep.
Any coincidence that last year that Texas and Ohio State were right there in the Final Four?
Yeah. No, I agree. I totally agree. All right, last thing before we get off here quickly. Greg McElroy says he's hearing that Coach Saban's going to be back in coaching. So should Brian Kelly be worried, or Billy Napier, that if they don't have a good year, that Coach Saban's sliding into their job?
You're already starting the coaching carousel. We hadn't played a football game yet. You're kicking into action the whole carousel, man. You heard what Nick said about Greg saying that, didn't you? That he might face a little bit more than ass chewing had he been playing for him.
Yeah. Pretty funny.
And listen, Greg has heard, I'm sure, a lot of the same things that you've heard and other people have been saying about a guy like Nick Saban. I don't think it's I'm not surprised that his name's being bandied about out there. I knew when he retired that he was always going to be a guy whose name as a possibility for a coaching job was never going to go away. When you win as much as he did in college football, and he's, first of all, let's say he did go back, which for the record, I do not think Nick is contemplating going back to coach football based on conversations with him and people around him. Okay. But if he did, let's say he did go back, let's just say hypothetically, it's not this year, so it's next year. He's going to be 75 years old. And he himself said when he stepped down that doing it the way he wants to do it, because Nick Saban's not going to go back to coach football and start delegating all of a sudden. He's going to do it exactly the way he's done it, which is exhausting. And for even someone who I used to think that was bionic, I always thought Nick was one of those guys that just could go 100 miles an hour, whether he was 50 or 90. But even for him, that's hard to do, to coach that way and to have your hands in everything and just be everywhere all the time. I mean, the guy was all over the country recruiting. There was nothing that touched his program that he did not have a major part of. And I don't think he would ever be able to get away from that So what I'm saying is, no, I do not see him going back to coaching, because I don't think that's something that in this point and stage in his life he feels like he'd be able to do. Two other caveats here. Number one, I don't think Miss Terry, who calls the shots in that family, by the way, will allow him to go back. And he really likes doing TV, and he's good at it. He's good at TV. We shouldn't be surprised. I was in his office not last year, but the year before. He was getting ready for the draft. He had piles of folders and files on his desk, just like he was getting ready to go recruiting. So he prepares for games on Saturday when he's on game day, just like he did opponents. So I think he's got a lot going on. They love going down to their new house in Jupiter, Florida. Hey, I've done this long enough that you never say never on anything. I'll tell you the same thing I told Paul Feinbaum. But if he's going back and thinking about coaching, it would be a massive surprise to me.
Yeah. Well, Chris, we'll talk to you again next week. Again, congratulations on the new gig, and enjoy Jake Coker pitching Pearl River Resort right here. This guy's come. Look at him. He's the master. I'm about to show you this. The master of television. So this is where his career is starting, and then who knows what movies he's going to star in next. Thanks, buddy. Roll Tide.
I may not suit up on Saturdays anymore, but I'm still in the game. In here, I call the plays, make adjustments, and lay it on the line. Want to feel that fire, that rush? Then you've got to get in the game. I used to say it in the tunnel, and I still say it now. Let's roll.